ZBCN gives me the vibe of XLM, but arguably in a much smaller scale, and here's why I think so, even though nothing I say is financial advice. It's because, first of all, if we take a look at Stellar, for quite a while, it was viewed as kind of pretty much the only viable alternative beyond something like Ripple. If we take a look at, for instance, that's why I think arguably we see a lot of people acquire XRP and XLM in tandem, right? Like a lot of my friends out there that have XRP, they also acquire something like XLM. But now there are emerging projects out there, in my opinion, arguably something like Zebic, which are kind of becoming considered as also kind of this viable alternative beyond something like Ripple, or should I say XRP. However, here's the thing. Of course, Zebic is at a much smaller scale, but it doesn't mean that it's not focused on pretty much kind of similar markets. Like, for instance, Stellar, of course, is heavily focused on payments, global trade and finance. We see those aspects too. When it comes to something like Zebic, it's also, again, focused on payments, global trade and finance. But then, of course, kind of the main argument that some people may have is that, when it comes to Stellar, take a look at the aspects of ISO 20022. Now, when it comes to that, I get it. It has Zebic beat in that aspect because, for instance, Zebic is working towards ISO 20022 compliance. So it still has kind of a ways to go there, in my opinion, arguably, in terms of kind of being recognized as somewhat a little bit similar to Stellar in that sense. But even besides that as well, some people also like to say the Stellar blockchain is very popular, it's very famous. Totally understand that. It is more popular than something like Zebic when it comes to Stellar just overall. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that Stellar beats, I think, kind of something like Zebic in all the aspects. Because, for instance, Zebic is focused on AI-based PayFi, right? I think that's pretty cool. It's also focused on RWAs, which stands for real-world assets. Not to mention, Zebic has the Zebic cards. Not to mention, it's focused on payrolls, which I think are also very fascinating. I mean, even Zebic currently, at least from the latest report that I saw, had over 200 payroll enterprise clients, which I find very impressive. Not to mention, we take a look at something like Zebic, which is, also focused on the world of education, arguably. I mean, they acquired something called Science Card UK, being focused on education through that. They're also focused on compliance by acquiring something like GateKnox. So I don't think necessarily Zebic is just kind of this, I would say watered down version of Stellar. It doesn't seem like that to me. Yeah, sure, it's not as popular, but it adds other layers to the project, if that makes sense. And also, let's not forget, XLM currently market cap is around 12 billion. Now, this is where I think arguably also ZBCN may have a slight edge, because let's take a look at, right? If let's say XLM did a 10x, market cap is like 120 billion at that point, around that, right? If we take a look at something like ZBCN, going to a market cap of $9 billion, which, give or take, it would have, considering current circulating supply at the price of 10 cents, that's around a 21x from here. Now we have to consider, would something that has a market cap of around 12 billion have kind of this easier time to do a 20x, or something arguably like ZBCN, which market cap is in the hundreds of millions right now? This is just kind of my mentality. I would say arguably something like ZBCN may not have such a difficult time maybe doing like even a 10x, let's say, because the market cap isn't that massive. Now, it doesn't mean that because the market cap is lower, it's guaranteed to do this or do that, because I don't think that is a guarantee. But then at the same time, I am just a fan of its lower market cap. Now, don't get me wrong, I still believe in XLM, but I do allocate more towards something like ZBCN just because, again, the market cap, I like Zebic as well because it has a Solana aspect, and then Solana is a very popular layer 1 blockchain. It's also emerging, Not to mention, we take a look at even Solana Ventures is one of the backers when it comes to Zebic, so I find that very fascinating. Not to mention, we take a look at Circle, and not only is Circle publicly listed, but then it is the creator of USDC, the stablecoin. Not only are they one of the early backers, allegedly, when it comes to Zebic, but they also allegedly hold a significant amount of ZBCN. And this is not something that I kind of discovered on my own like that. This is actually even according to a post on X by Zebic themselves, even talking about this. So I find that very fascinating in the grand scheme of things. Typically, as a worst case scenario, altcoins, they usually peak around a year and a half after a Bitcoin halving event. So let's say we take a year and a half from the last Bitcoin halving event, from April of 2024, that would actually mean October of this year in 2025. I don't think that's guaranteed though, because it could happen maybe November or December, if it ever even does, or maybe let's say even Q1 of next year. Who knows? I mean, there's no way for me to tell the exact future, but at least what I can do is just stay patient and just focus on things that are within my control, and that's what I'm gonna do. And when it comes to Zepic, it does kind of give me the vibe of Stellar, which is why I'm still staying patient. And feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'd greatly appreciate it. It's Bunny the Captain, and I'll catch you all in the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.